Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Analytical Lion on Com Radio. I'm Josh Davis. As always, I thank you all for joining me. It is episode 99 in the history of TAL. It's a special one, and of course, next week is going to be episode 100. That's why I'm mentioning it. So I just want to let you all know, it's been a lot of good episodes of the Analytical Lion, but I would like to say, even though we're approaching 100, I'm just getting started. This is exactly where I want to be with the show, and it's really taking off so far this season. A lot of big things on the table for next week and beyond. This week is going to be a little different. I'm going to focus on analyzing the Villanova game, talk about some of the other stuff going on around college football. I'll definitely mention some things about the Oregon game coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next week, I'll do a playoff contender preview. I'll do a full preview of the marquee matchup between the Nittany Lions and the Ducks. But this week, because it's the bye week, I will not be doing that full Oregon preview quite yet. Hey, if you're interested in betting college football or just want to learn more about college football in general, the Analytical Lion Patreon is just for you. Every week I compile a scouting report with the best info for all the action around the country. You can check them out for free with the link in the description. I'm going to move on to the Villanova analysis. Let's kick things off. I wouldn't be starting this show off right if I didn't mention Drew Aller's struggles continuing. Part of it is definitely the simplified play calling by Coach K in the first 3 games, using them as an extension of fall camp to ramp things up. However, Drew hasn't executed the simple stuff at a high level. So why would you expect him to execute against Power 4 defenses? That's kind of my question that I'm taking away after 3 games so far is, yes, it's awesome that we're simplifying stuff and kind of keeping things close to our chest. But at the same time, if Drew can't execute the simple stuff, why is he going to execute against Oregon in a couple of weekends? That's the big question on my mind, and I'm sure a lot of your minds as well. There were some highs, as always. The scripted first drive was very solid, and then the 1-minute drill at the end of the first half was phenomenal as well. Aller's performance has been enigmatic so far, because while his overall play has a lot left to be desired, he continues to flash the Heisman-level ceiling every game. It's just that those star plays have been ephemeral rather than consistent. The receiver play has been improved. The tight end situation with Dink and Reynolds hasn't skipped a beat. The big takeaway for me is that, yes, I know Drew Aller will play better down the stretch, but even with his lackluster job for Penn State, they've remained a potent offense as a whole. I got these notes here. The run game has picked up the slack and gone for 581 yards on the ground in those first 3 games, averaging 5.5 yards per carry with 9 touchdowns. So I'm going to mention the red zone stuff here in a minute, but the key there is what has been succeeding in the red zone so far. You could even go as far back as last season. I think if you just want to look at Coach K, you can go as far back as the Buffalo days, nearly a decade ago. How was he succeeding with his offenses in the red zone? It was with pounding the rock. It was with elite offensive lines and run game, and this is by far the most symbolic situation of that here at Penn State, where this is the best team he's ever had. This is the best offense he's ever had, and yet what is Coach K wanting to do? Even with the simple stuff, it has been pounding the rock. And there's absolutely no reason to go away from it. If you're averaging over 5 yards a carry, that's first downs all day. And the key that I've said on this show several times is if you can't stop the run, you can't win games. It's that simple. And you can take the inverse of that and just flip it and say, if you can run the ball consistently, and the other team can't stop you, you will win football games. And for Penn State right now, especially going into this Oregon game, I'm sure many fans don't really care how much we beat Oregon by. Yes, I think we can beat them by a touchdown or more. I still don't really have a clue what my prediction's going to be yet. I have some ideas, but still waiting to see how the Ducks perform against Oregon State this weekend. But I think the key from that is This is going to be a tightly contested battle, and Penn State fans wouldn't care if they beat Oregon by 14 points or 3 points. They just want to win the football game. There are levels to that. I'll talk about what Brian Kelly was saying in his press conference later in the show with, yes, winning ugly isn't necessarily a good thing. You want to win football games, but you don't want to be complacent and say, okay, we could have done better, we left more on the table, and we just didn't want it. You definitely want to take full advantage of the potential of your offense, and that's what I've loved with the run game so far. Really the only bit that I've seen that you can look at and say, this hasn't quite been up to par is with Nick Singleton's home runs. And even then, people have been criticizing Singleton for his lack of production so far. He's still averaging over 5 yards a carry. So that's something where if he's averaging over 5 yards a carry and fans are complaining about it, either the standards are too high or Singleton's that good that he has another level beyond that. And that's what I think is the case. If you want to split hairs and you want to wonder why Penn State hasn't scored more points, just look at the red zone efficiency, where they're kicking field goals 35% of the time. Among Power 4 teams, that's the 10th highest field goal rate in the country so far. It's concerning because Penn State experienced a lot of the red zone issues last season as well, and there's reason to believe that the offense will be able to push things to the next level once they get into conference play. And then speaking on the rest of the offense, you can't miss Fat Man right now. I know it took almost 7 minutes for me to mention Kaytron Allen, but he's rushed for 10 times for 86 yards against Villanova. That's 8.6 yards per carry, along with an 18-yard touchdown. After 3 games, he's rushing for a ridiculous 8 yards per carry, and he's absolutely taken his strong finish from last year through the offseason. He looks like a completely different runner than he did at the start of last season. And the sky is the limit for him right now. With how some of the other preseason top backs have done, Kaytron Allen is the best running back in football right now. Nick Singleton still has yet to break off one of his signature home runs, but he's been efficient in the passing game, and he has 5 touchdowns already to open the season. I know there's big things in the future for Nick. And then I want to mention the defense under Jim Knowles has been a turnover machine. Elliott Washington and Jameer Joseph each had interceptions against Villanova, with Joseph returning his 49 yards to the house. That's now 7 turnovers already this season, good for second in the country in turnover margin. I know Denai Sutton was banged up and didn't technically get any tackles last week, but he still impacted the game and was the sole reason why the Nittany Lions defense was able to get that first interception. This is a key point going into some of our big games this season, especially Oregon. How do you get interceptions? How do you get turnovers? Some people would say, you need really good DBs. And I think this question has been answered over the last few weeks, not just by Penn State, but teams across the country and even in the NFL. Defenses create turnovers with great D-line play by getting to the quarterback, creating pressure. It even comes from fumbles where if a D lineman is in such good positioning to be able to attack the ball in a running back's arms, that's how you generate fumbles as well. A crucial thing for DDS is his ability to create chaos in the backfield, along with other pairings, whether it's Chaz Coleman or whoever on the other side. Those guys have been able to wreak havoc on their opposing offensive linemen. And that, in turn, has created a lot of turnovers for this Penn State defense so far. And in the whiteout, what is one play that could completely flip the momentum of a game and completely allow Penn State to take over? It would be a turnover. We saw it last year in the whiteout in the playoffs with Kevin Jennings and SMU, and how the defense had those 2 pick sixes and 3 interceptions in the first half, and how that completely set the tone while the offense was struggling. No matter if the offense is struggling or not against Oregon, this defense should be able to create pressure, potentially generate mistakes from Dante Moore, and that could be the way that Penn State wins this game and avoids some struggles early on. I have to mention the special teams domination as well. Ryan Barker was perfect again against Villanova. I believe 8 for 8 on his kicks. It's been awesome to see more consistency in the kicking game and see that continuation from Barkey from last year. DJ Ross is dominating in the return game as well. That's really pleasant to see as the new transfer is making plays with his fast speed. Gabe Nwosu ensuring the field position battle favors Penn State. His punting game has been a revelation from the kickoff specialist in prior seasons, although the kickoffs do need a little bit of work. Always something to work on special teams. And then back to the defense real quick. I want to talk about the linebacker group because they just went off last week. We had Amari Campbell, Tony Rojas, and Dom DeLuca combining for 16 tackles and 3 sacks. Campbell and safety King Mack are first and third on the team in tackles, sandwiching Rojas, which is just awesome to see from those two impact transfers. All in all, it's been encouraging to see the team get better as the games go on and make adjustments, along with displaying strong depth and line play. I'll just say this, in terms of the quality of the opponent, we just saw teams struggle with Austin Peay. I believe it was Georgia that struggled with Austin Peay a few weeks ago. Austin Peay is ranked right around where Villanova is in FCS. And for Penn State to go out there and be winning 52-0 with a few seconds left and end up winning 52-6 after that incredible final play, which I also have to mention, it was number 1 on SportsCenter yesterday. That was just so much fun. The last few minutes of that game were so much fun to be at and witness in person with the crowd getting back up on their feet and getting loud, despite most people having left early. That was a lot of fun. But that was a decent opponent. I don't want to go on this too much because I know it's FCS, but there are teams like Georgia struggling with worse opponents than that right now. Penn State took care of business. I want to make that very clear. And then I just want to say that going into the bye week, with the Oregon game looming, I can unequivocally say that Penn State has the best and most fearsome defense in college football. It's so crucial. Because what is winning championships right now? What controls the game? It's the defense. I just mentioned it a minute ago with how the defense creates turnovers, but all in all, the solidity of this defense with Jim Knowles at the helm and the amount of talent all over the field, this defense looks scary to scheme against right now. On the other side of the ball, I can without a doubt say that Penn State's offensive line and running backs combine for the best rushing attack in college football. Their ability to control the game on the ground and at the line of scrimmage, along with the ability to suffocate opponents with their defense and create turnovers, Penn State has the makings of a truly elite program right now. I'm going to do a little bit of story time. I love story times on the Analytical Line. I don't do it enough, honestly. When I first started covering Penn State football in 2021, they had a Week 1 game in Madison against Wisconsin. They were coming off of a 4-5 season in 2020. They were pre-ranked number 19 in the country. They went on to grind out an upset of the number 12 Badgers before injuries derailed what was a promising season. However, slowly but surely, the level of success and the expectations surrounding the program grew. Maybe it was after the 2022 Rose Bowl, or last year after a run to the playoff semifinals. But the key is that Penn State is now playing at a higher level of football than I've ever seen them play. James Franklin is 1-15 against top 5 opponents, but he has not been favored in a single one of those games. Yes, you might have been expecting Penn State to pull off at least a couple of those upsets, but the important thing to note is that when Oregon comes to town in a couple of weeks, it'll be the first time in James Franklin's tenure that he will be favored over a top 5 opponent. Finally, after all this time, he's expected to win. He has the advantage. Statistically, Oregon has looked elite, but they're still a very young team. They still have to travel all the way across the country into the toughest environment in the world. Dan Lanning was complaining about Northwestern pumping in fake crowd noise this past weekend and noted that it was annoying his offense. Well, he's about to see what real crowd noise is like. In a few weeks, when Dante Moore has to fend off the concussive environment that has haunted many quarterbacks before him. Also, I just expect this whiteout to be turned up another notch. Yeah, I can sit here and yap about how I wish the whiteout was against Ohio State or Michigan and that Oregon isn't a big opponent for us, but at the same time, they're a top 5 team and it would be an important win for Penn State. Considering the fact that the last few whiteouts have been against Washington, Iowa, and Minnesota, it'll be refreshing for the greatest show in college sports. It'll be refreshing for the greatest show in college sports to be back in a marquee matchup. Listen, there were 109,000 people in the stands last weekend to see Penn State play Villanova, and after the loss to Oregon in the Big Ten Championship last year, and just the buffoonery of Oregon fans online since that game, Penn State fans will be eager to get in Beaver Stadium and make their impact on the game. Make sure to tune in to next week's show for my full preview of Penn State, Oregon. I'll be doing a deep dive, analyzing their Oregon State game, and making sure everybody who watches is completely ready for a top 5 tilt against the Ducks. Now, I want to check in with how things are going for the rest of the college football world. Some top teams won in nail-biters, others won in blowouts, and overall, the chaos of college football continues to flow like water. It's awesome. I mentioned last week that Georgia and Tennessee was going to be a shootout because neither of them can play defense, and boy was that a good take. 85 points combined between those two resulted in a Georgia win in overtime after the Tennessee kicker missed the game-winning kick at the end of regulation. Joey Aguilar is for real. SEC defense? Maybe not. It's a generalization, sure, but as a whole, the SEC has become offensive-focused and simply aren't making plays on the defensive side of the ball anymore. I mentioned this earlier. What still wins championships? Why are Big Ten teams winning national championships all of a sudden? It's because of defense. Yes, it's because of money as well, and these teams in the Northeast have more money, but I think that's also just bringing in more defensive talent with a combination of culture. Until I see an SEC team stand out defensively, I just can't think of them as a true natty contender, but that's still a really big win for Georgia on the road. Vanderbilt looked great in their win over South Carolina. Clark Lee is showing off one of the best defenses in the SEC right now. I just mentioned it. Vandy's got a defense over there. Georgia Tech closed Clemson's casket, put them 6 feet deep, and we can officially forget about whatever the Tigers do the rest of the season. The Jackets, on the other hand, look like a contender in the ACC. Texas A&M pulled off a stunning upset over Notre Dame in a high-scoring affair. Yes, we know the Texas team had no defense, but the Irish defense, appearing so flat coming off their championship appearance, is concerning. Marcus Freeman's margin for error just about hit 0, but I still think if they run the table, they'll find themselves in the thick of things. We were all wrong about Notre Dame. This was my preseason number 1 team. Yeah, you can take too much from a pair of close losses to some good teams. You can overreact to that all you want, but those are both games Notre Dame had in the bag and didn't execute defensively, which I'm sure just drives Coach Freeman up the wall. LSU is definitely a top 20 team. They might be a top 15 team, but they're certainly not the number 3 team in college football. They scored just 17 points against Clemson, whose defense just made Georgia Tech look elite. Then LSU scored 23 points against Louisiana Tech, and then 20 points against Florida this past weekend. It's awesome that their defense has done enough to win those games, and I just mentioned that there's a lot of SEC defenses struggling so far, so LSU's one of the exceptions rather than the rule. It's great that they're sticking out there. But they have Ole Miss, Vandy, A&M, Bama, and Oklahoma on their schedule later this year. Listen, LSU is in for a big fall if they can't figure out the offense. In the Florida game, LSU had just 54 yards on the ground before a long run on the last play of the game. Garrett Nussmeier is simply not good and about as overrated as it gets. And the offensive line is struggling a lot as well, and that might be the root cause of a lot of these issues elsewhere. But I think the biggest issue is Brian Kelly's approach to these issues, where he berated a reporter after the game when the reporter asked what was wrong with the offense. When the head coach can't take 2 seconds to look at the numbers and have the humility to say that, yeah, they're not good enough, that's a problem. They might be the top-ranked SEC team right now, but I would still pick 4 or 5 other teams to make the conference title game before I would pick LSU. Iowa State survived Arkansas State this past weekend, but they're going to have to play better than that to warrant the top spot in the Big 12 and the number 12 ranking in the country. Utah and Texas Tech both looked really good. Now they play each other next week to decide some big things in the Big 12. The winner of that game really could coast to the conference title game. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Missouri, Indiana, and Illinois crushed some weak opponents and all look fantastic. Fernando Mendoza finally clicked for the Hoosiers, going 19 for 20 for 270 yards and 5 TDs against Indiana State. Video game numbers from the Hoosier QB. Moving on to the games this weekend. Number 9 Illinois heads to number 19 Indiana for a massive contest in the Big Ten. The Illini have played like one of the most dangerous and complete teams in college football so far, but the Hoosiers lead the country in touchdowns scored. We saw how Indiana was able to dominate over weak opponents last season, but their struggles came up in marquee games. We'll see if Curt Cignetti can get a signature win at home and knock off one of the top contenders in the Big Ten. Plus, we haven't really seen Elijah Surratt take over yet. However, I'd like to lean towards Illinois on this one. As Luke Allmeyer and co. is more experienced, they've shown more consistency so far. But anything can happen when both teams play their first big test of the season. Listen, I'm really disappointed Game Day's not coming to this one. They chose Florida at Miami, which I believe Florida is 1-2 now. Obviously, Miami looks like one of the best teams in the country, but there were 3 ranked versus ranked games this weekend, with Illinois, Indiana being the best one, and Game Day messed up. They didn't choose any of them. That was disappointing. There was even that SEC one with Auburn and Oklahoma, which I'll talk about in a minute. Really surprised, at least if they didn't want to choose the Big Ten game, they didn't choose that game. So, not sure what Game Day's doing going to Miami this weekend. Especially considering the stadium's not even on a college campus. Miami seems like it would be like one of the worst places to hold Game Day, in my opinion. I already mentioned the Big 12 matchup between number 16 Utah and number 17 Texas Tech, but this is the big game at noon this weekend. With several top teams like Penn State, Ohio State, and Georgia on byes, the sights of college football fans shift to the next level of teams. This is a perfect chance for both of these squads to show off what they're made of and create some clarity in the Big 12. I know that conference is going to be experiencing a lot of pandemonium this season, but these are 2 of the top contenders along with BYU and Iowa State. Actually, listen, I want to go back to Game Day real quick because I just reminded myself I really do expect Game Day to be coming to Penn State in a couple weekends for the Oregon game. The main reason is because the other top game that weekend was Georgia-Bama. And I was talking about before the season that even like if both those teams were undefeated, I still expect a Game Day to come to Penn State for this week and then go to Texas at Georgia in Week 12. Because I mean, if the Dogs are looking this good, you got to go to Athens at some point. But then Bama lost, so it makes it really obvious. Penn State-Oregon is the biggest game of Week 5, which is an absolutely stacked slate. It's probably the best weekend of college football all season, just top games all around. I unfortunately won't be able to watch very many of them in real time because I'll be in Beaver Stadium, but I will be watching as many as I can on replay to get all the action in my head. But I really expect Game Day to be coming to Happy Valley in a few weekends. So maybe ESPN was sitting there like, we don't want to go to Big Ten country 2 weeks in a row, so we'll head down south to Miami for this one. And I think they were just at Oklahoma for Michigan a few weeks ago, so that's probably why they didn't want to go back to Norman. Then you could have gone to Utah, Texas Tech, too. Like, that would have been a really fun one. I don't know. Game Day messed up this week, but I think for sure they will get the Week 5 game right, and they'll be heading to Penn State, Oregon in the Whiteout. There's some 3:30 football in the SEC this week. Number 22 Auburn heading to Norman to face number 11 Oklahoma. While Auburn has surprised so far this season with strong play on both sides of the ball, they haven't been tested yet. and their win over Baylor might not end up being very important. However, the Tigers' next 4 games is number 11 Oklahoma, at number 10 Texas A&M, versus number 5 Georgia, and versus number 23 Missouri. That's 4 games that they're not going to be favored in, and I think that after the first 30 minutes of football this weekend, we'll know Auburn's chances of actually winning any of those games. As for now, I'm going to say they're probably in for a rough string of losses coming up. But I'm open to getting surprised again. Oklahoma already took care of business against Michigan, and we know that John Mateer has this team in position to contend for an SEC title. Still at 3:30, if the Auburn-Oklahoma game isn't interesting, you can watch the Tulane-Ole Miss game if that one is more appealing. Neither of these teams have won impressively, but they're both 3-0, and that's what matters. Ole Miss definitely has the talent edge and home field advantage, but Jake Retzlaff is playing well, and we've seen the Rebels throw worse games than this. If you want to watch some Big Ten football at 3:30, there's Michigan at Nevada in Lincoln, where Dylan Raiola and the Huskers look to make their move with a statement victory. Michigan is more talented, but Nebraska is more experienced, and I think this might finally be Nebraska's time to shine again. However, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if their defense faltered and Bryce Underwood diced them up. Florida and Miami should be an interesting matchup, but the Gators have fallen to 1-2, and Miami has surprisingly played like one of the best teams in the country so far. I already mentioned College Game Day's heading to town, or not town. It's the big issue with going to game day at Miami is that you can't hold it on their campus. I just don't get it. Someone please educate me on that. The Hurricanes have a laughably easy schedule the rest of the way, but their upcoming stretch at home versus Florida, at Florida State, and then back at home versus Louisville is the toughest bit left. We've been saying it for years, but a bad loss here in Miami might be the final straw for Billy Napier. And lastly, I know it's tough being a fan during a bye week, but there's tons of football going on, and the extra time just gives you all a chance to watch some of the other exhilarating action going on across the country. Please tune in to some of the other games around college football. Maybe throw some bets on them if you're interested in that. I will have the college football Patreon scouting report out on Wednesday, as always, giving my top picks. I believe I was at 63% this past week, and I'm still over, I think I'm 68% for the season. So picks are still doing awesome. Make sure to check out the scouting report on the Patreon. And then make sure to tune in next week. Episode 100 on the Analytical Lion, previewing a historical game against Top 5 Oregon in the Whiteout. It'll be an awesome episode. I might push it a little past 30 minutes just to make sure I get everything. Just can't wait for this one. It'll be a special episode of TAL. Thank you all for tuning in, and as always, go Nittany Lions.